morning. Thank you for coming on this day. We begin the feast of the Panagia, the Dormition of the Panagia. So it's a beautiful opportunity to kind of refocus our lives. This is a period of time, as you know, of Mystia. Not strict Mystia, but we fast nonetheless in commemorating the falling estate, as I said, of the Mother of God. I'm going to speak a little bit more about that in my homily. But what I wanted to let you know is that we're going to do a Paraclesi service immediately after the distribution of the Antidron. So those of you who need to go, after when you get your Antidron, you can just depart, have your coffee, or go home. Those of you who would like to stay for the Paraclesis, after you get your Antidron, come right back in, sit down, and we will offer the service. It shouldn't be more than 1/2 hour. It's a little longer because it also has a gospel lesson, but it's about a half an hour we should be able to finish. If you have names that you would like us to remember, you can give those names in the back of the church. I thank again Lasha Tamara for the Kalimata. Thank you, very beautiful. And as I mentioned, if anybody wants to purchase the blue set, the gold set, you can talk to Mato, and we can coordinate that. I'm not sure what the cost was. Did they come from the old country? From here? Beautiful. Nice. And they are nice, so thank you. On behalf of the church, we thank you. In you, O Lord, do I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, deliver me. Incline your ear, O Lord, and rescue me. Be my rock, a refuge to me, a strong fortress, and save me. For you are my rock and my fortress, and for your name's sake you lead me and guide me. You take me out of the net they have hidden for me, for you are my refuge. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted from grief, my soul and my body also. For my life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighing. My strength fails because of my iniquity, and my bones waste away. But I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Rescue me from the hand of my enemies and from my persecutors. Make your face shine upon me. I thought of this psalm, Psalm 31, by the way, written by David. As you know, the story of David became a king, but at the same time, the church fathers say he was one of the greatest of sinners and became one of the grandest of saints in the Old Testament. He committed murder, adultery, a lot of other sins, and yet he repented of those things, acknowledging his sin before God, and he wrote the Psalms as his penance. They were songs of sorrow and repentance to God, and that's one of the reasons why I advise individuals when they're going through a difficult time in their lives, they've sinned and they go to confession or they're preparing for confession, to go to the Psalms and to read them. To read them carefully, to read them perhaps on your knees at night, in order to follow the example of St. David, who through the Psalms and through his penance was redeemed by God, forgiven by God. And that's why he says, you have made me whiter than snow. And he becomes king, grandest king of the Jews of Israel. I was thinking about that psalm, and I went back and spent some time reading it and reflecting it. There's more to it. I just took a few pericopes out of it. It's a longer one of the Psalms, Psalm 31. Because I thought of the story of the Dormition of the Panagia. As in a parenthesis, I say to you, whenever there is a feast day in the church, a season in the church, maybe you're going to come to a liturgy, special liturgy, spend some time studying, praying, and meditating before you come. So that when you come, you can be prepared. You can be, your phronima is the correct. Your posture is correct. Don't come cold, in other words. Much like you would go to an opera, before you would go to the opera or a symphony, it's a nice, good idea to open up a book and read the story, maybe read a little bit about the composer, so that when you go, you have a fuller sharing of the experience. So I was thinking about the Panagia's Dormition yesterday when we began the 15 days, and I reread the Synaxaria, so I hope you have done the same, but it's important for me to keep repeating so that we don't forget. And those who've never heard before, they hear it maybe for the first time. And that is that when the Panagia, the Virgin Mary, was preparing to pass away, she was revealed in this by God, and that she would die in 3 days. So she went up to the mountain and she prayed, and then she came down from the mountain. And in a miraculous way, according to the Church Fathers, in a miraculous way, the apostles, the disciples, no matter where they were carried supernaturally to her, not to her grave, but to where she was getting ready to pass away at the bedside. And she was able to minister to them at that point, telling them, I'm leaving, but you will always be protected by my Son, Jesus Christ. And when she passed away, they carried her to the sepulchre. And as they were carrying her to the sepulchre, you can imagine there were some people there who acknowledged her as the Mother of God, respected her. But there were some others, and we are told in the story that there was a benevolent Jewish man who was making fun of her, and actually went to the bier as they were carrying it to the sepulchre and tried to topple it over. And as he did that, what happened to him? His hands were cut off. Recognizing what had happened, he repented, asked for forgiveness, and his hands were miraculously returned to his body, and later on went on to serve Christ in another capacity, became a convert to the church. So I was thinking, as soon as I thought of that, the hands, cut off, the hands being placed, I went back to Psalm 31, where I recall, by the way, it is in Psalm 31 where Jesus is on the cross and he says, my Lord, my God, why have you forsaken me? And he says, into your hands I commit my spirit. That's where it comes from, Psalm 31. He quoted when he was on the cross the Psalms. He wasn't showing rejection by God. He was actually teaching us how to die. And for those of us who understand these things, we know that when we prepare to pass on to another life, we can begin to acknowledge what we should acknowledge throughout our whole lives. That ultimately, our life, our days, as it says in the verse 15, my times are in your hand. Rescue me from the hand of my enemies and from my persecutors, which I would tell you are not only society persecutes us, but actually temptations and demonic powers. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Your times are in your hands. And as I was beginning more and more to think about that in my own life, it was ironic, or I should say serendipitous, that when I began to prepare for today, for the gospel lesson, I see the connection, a very obvious connection. Those of you who are here, and I can't emphasize enough. I'm going to continue to do it until some of you will change your bad habits, and that is coming into church after the gospel lesson. There are some churches, there are some monasteries, that if you come to the church after the gospel lesson, you're not allowed in. Because we're showing disrespect to the Word of God. But anyway, I close the parentheses. We come and we hear the gospel lesson of Jesus sending his disciples out on the boat. He goes to pray. He sees the boat being in trouble on the water, and he comes to the disciples walking on the water. And as he's getting close, Peter, in a selfish way, by the way, wants to leave his comrades and go to Jesus. As if Jesus is not going to come and save them all. He's going to go out to him. Can I come out to you? As a teaching father, which Jesus always is, he says, come. In order to teach him a lesson. Do you think that you can walk on the water as I walk on the water? You think that? Ella, try. He starts to walk, and immediately, as soon as he sees and he recognizes the winds and the waves and everything that's going on, what does he do? He starts to drown. And what happens? He says, Lord, save me. And what does Jesus do? He reaches out his hand and saves him, brings him into the water. God brings him into the boat. How many times, I was, again, reflecting on my own life, how many times have I been so arrogant to think that I can do things without Jesus' strength? Countless times. And every time I try to do it without Jesus, what happens? Down. Why? And why does he let me do it? To teach me. When are you going to learn? When are you going to learn? You cannot do anything without me. That's a lesson we all have to learn. And that's the danger of self-sufficiency. When we become self-sufficient, maybe our portfolio is very full. You know, we have nice retirement, and our investments are doing well, you know, and our health is well, and we are young, and everything is going wonderful. It's almost as though we don't need them. As soon as something happens to people, as soon as they get into the hospital, as soon as something is going wrong with their families, with their children, with their spouses, what do? They call up the priest, Father, pray for me. As if I have a red phone in my house, that you can call me and immediately I pick up the phone and say, by the way, Otale just called me, he's having some problems. Can you reach out your hand and help him or her? If our posture, if our phronima is naturally to acknowledge that I can't do anything without Jesus, we'll always be close to him. We'll always know that his hand is there. We won't be walking on the water without him. No, we won't do it. We will have faith that he will come to us. Yes, we have to do our part. We can't let God. However, we have to realize that most of the work is done by him. It's beautiful, beautiful. So our hands are important. If you do a search in the Bible and you do the search hands, it comes up so many times. Even in praying, we lift up our hands to you in prayer. You kiss the priest's hands because they touch the body of Jesus Christ, not because of any respect to me. No, because the hands touched the body of Jesus. That's the reason why you do it. It is Jesus' hands that are important to us. I could jump to so many stories, but the one that I want to share with you quickly from the Old Testament is the story of Gideon in Judges. Judges 17 is the chapter where you read a beautiful story. A great lesson that connects to this. You may know it. I hope you know it. The Jews were fighting the Midianites at that time. It's an enemy. It's not important to know the history of it. They were fighting an enemy, and Gideon, who was a judge, in other words, he was a general. That's what judges mean, a military leader. Said to himself, you know, we're in good shape to fight the Midianites. I have 32,000 soldiers. Okay? Pat yourself on the back. You see 32,000 people behind you, like, we're good. And God appears to him and says, you know, you have too many. Which is interesting to me. I want to read you just some of the verses so you get the gist of what's going on here. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. God is saying this, I cannot deliver Midian into your hands. Why? Or you, Israel, will boast against me, saying, my own strength has saved me. So now, announce to your soldiers and ask them if any of them want to go back. They're kind of afraid, fearful, they could go back home. You can imagine Gideon saying, oh, okay, just a few will leave. Well, according to the story, 22,000 men packed up and left. Now he's got 10,000. Again, Gideon is saying to himself, at least I've got 10,000 behind me. Okay, it would have been better if I had the 32, but these are more dedicated men, 10,000 men. Again, God says, there are still too many. I love this story. They're said to me, take them down to the water, in other words, an oasis there, and tell them to drink before the battle. And here's where the real lesson takes place. They go down to drink, and some of them, as many of us might do, in order to drink, we go down on our knees, we cup the water, and we drink it, right? You'd say, okay, what's wrong with that? But there was another group of men who didn't do that. They got down on their knees, and they lapped the water with their mouths, with their lips, without using their hands. And it is interesting when you read the next part of that, he says, tell the ones who cupped their hands to go home. Only 300 were left. You see maybe the connection here somehow of the 300 with the Spartans. Maybe that's for a scholar, good doctoral paper there. But so 300 left, only 300. And so the question is, why? By the way, which group did he send home? The ones that cupped, you have 50-50 chance. The ones that cupped or the ones that lapped the water? The ones that cupped. He sent home. Why? It's the why that's important. Because if you're ready for battle and you want to wage war, your hands have to be what? Ready. They're not focused on yourself, they're focused on doing battle. And so their hands, they wanted to keep them dry. They were lapping, prepared to do what they needed to do. So the ones that lapped went home. 300 left. Then there's another step. God, through a dream, says, this is what you're going to do. In one hand, you're going to give them a trumpet. And in the other hand, you're going to give them a bowl, an empty bowl, with a lantern in it. And through that, I'm not going to go through the whole story how that happened. They went into the Midianites, and because they had the trumpet and because they had the light, the Midianites panicked, and they began fighting each other, and they ran, and ultimately, Gideon says, yes, the battle was the Lord's, and the Lord won the battle. If you go now and you check, what was the purpose of the trumpet? What is the purpose of the trumpet, and what is the purpose of the light? It is exactly what Jesus wants us to do the same thing. Is to use our hands. We are in his hands, but to use our hands to wage, not necessarily a battle, but to wage a battle in this world, spiritual battle, in which with one trumpet, the trumpet in the Old Testament represented the witness of God. They would blow it in the desert. Blowing of the trumpet meant God was present and we need to witness to him and obey him. And the light represented the truth, the wisdom of God. Isn't that ultimately how we should live our lives and how the world should live its life? It's our job as Christians to carry the light, I must have Christofori, and also to carry the light and to blow the trumpet of who we are, to obey Jesus, to obey God, and ultimately his light, his truth, his word, that ultimately it is in his hands, not our own, that we find victory ultimately. So let me end this way. The fast period. Fasting the proper way, not the first grade way, the higher level of fasting, is to let go of of those things that we are holding on to that keep us from blowing the trumpet and carrying the light of Jesus Christ. That's what fasting is about. It's not about how many fava I'm going to eat, or the faques I'm going to have, or I'm not going to have any of this or have any of that, and then pat myself on the back and say, what a fantastic guy I was after 15 days. God will reward me for all this. No, absolutely not. That's egoismo. That's not fasting. Fasting is to recognize and to reflect. Say, what do I have in my hands that I need to cut off? What am I holding in my hands in which I dishonor the church or dishonor the Panagir? Cut it out. Cut it out. Let go of it. And take up rather the trumpet and take up the light. And at the end, if we can begin to realize, I don't need as much as I think I need. Or I may need those things, but I'm not going to put my faith and trust in those things. My faith and trust is in the word of the Lord, in obeying his commandments. May the Panagia bless us and give us the strength to be able in 15 days to acknowledge that everything in our life is from him, and ultimately it's in his hands that our life exists. Trust.